"Serve us, bitch." The thug's voice cut through Rosie's diner like a blade. Emily Carter froze behind the counter, coffee pot trembling in her hands. 3 drunk men in leather jackets. Cruel smiles. The smell of beer and arrogance. And no one? Not the old couple in the corner, not the truck driver at the window, not the mother with her sleeping child, would meet her eyes. She was alone, until the door opened again. 4 bikers walked in, their presence changing the air itself. What happened next would change Emily's life forever. It was one of those nights when the world outside looked cruel and gray, when rain beat against the cracked windows of Rosie's diner, and the neon sign flickered its red glow onto the wet pavement. Emily Carter was barely 25, wearing a faded blue apron and a smile that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. Life had not been gentle with her. She'd had dreams once, studying nursing, maybe opening her own cafe someday. But dreams don't pay bills. Not when you're alone. Not when your mother's medicine costs more than your weekly paycheck. And definitely not when you're stuck working the night shift, serving people who treat you like a servant rather than a soul. Tonight was the night that broke something inside her. The 3 men who'd burst through the door were exactly the kind Emily had learned to fear. The biggest one, a red-faced man named Derek Holt, was known all over town. Bar brawler. Wife beater. 2 months ago, he'd put his girlfriend in the hospital with a broken jaw. Nothing happened. No charges. No consequences. Because Derek's uncle was the sheriff. Men like Derek never faced consequences. Derek slammed his fist on the counter. "Hey, sweetheart, serve us. We've been waiting all day to see that pretty face." The word bitch still echoed in Emily's ears, shattering what little calm remained. Her fingers tightened around the coffee pot until her knuckles went white. She forced herself to breathe, to stay calm, to smile. Because that's what her boss told her. The customer is always right. But the tremor in her voice betrayed her. "Of course, sir. What can I get you?" They laughed. Not because she'd said something funny, but because they enjoyed watching her flinch. One of them reached across the counter and tugged at her apron strings. Another snapped his fingers an inch from her face, demanding extra sugar. The other customers kept their heads down, pretending not to see. No one wanted trouble. Emily felt her eyes burn, not from fear, but from humiliation. She wanted to scream, to run. But her mother's face flashed in her mind, frail and smiling weakly from her hospital bed. And so, Emily stayed. The rain outside grew heavier, thunder rumbling like an angry warning. Just when Derek's laughter grew loud enough to drown out the sound of her breaking heart, the diner door creaked open again. This time, it wasn't with arrogance, but with quiet, deliberate power. 4 men walked in. Bikers, their leather jackets worn, their boots scuffed, their presence commanding. The tallest among them, a bearded man with gray streaks in his hair and a deep scar running across his cheek, took a slow look around the diner. His eyes, cold steel mixed with compassion, landed on Emily, then on the men at the counter. The laughter faded like smoke. His name was Jack Ironside Morrison. He'd been coming to Rosie's diner for 15 years, every Thursday night. Same booth, same black coffee, same quiet respect for the people who worked hard for their living. He'd watched Emily grow from a scared teenager taking her first waitressing job to a young woman carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. He knew about her mother in the hospital, knew about the medical bills that never seemed to stop, knew she stayed late cleaning tables, sometimes crying in the back room when customers got especially cruel. So when Jack walked in tonight and saw 3 drunk thugs surrounding her, one of them grabbing her wrist while she trembled, something inside him snapped. Not just because it was wrong, but because Emily reminded him of his own daughter, the one he'd lost 10 years ago to a drunk driver. The one with the same kind eyes and the same tired smile. The one he couldn't save. This time, he could. Emily tried to keep serving coffee, her hands shaking, but when Derek grabbed her wrist and yanked her closer, the sound of a chair scraping the floor sliced through the tension. Jack Morrison stood up. "You might want to let go of the lady," he said, in a voice calm enough to scare the devil himself. Derek laughed, but his voice cracked slightly. "What's it to you, old man?" Jack stepped closer, his boots echoing on the tiled floor. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "She's working. You're acting like trash. I don't like trash." The room went still. Even the rain seemed to pause. The other bikers, silent but ready, stood behind Jack. A wall of unspoken promise. One of them leaned against the jukebox. Another folded his arms. The air thickened with tension. Derek and his friends exchanged glances, trying to decide if their pride was worth the pain that clearly awaited them. Jack tilted his head slightly. "Walk away," he said softly, "and you get to keep your teeth tonight." For a long, dangerous second, it seemed like a fight would break out. But Derek, realizing he was outnumbered and outmatched, muttered curses under his breath. He released Emily's wrist and stumbled toward the door, his friends following. The door slammed shut behind them. Silence. Just the hum of the neon sign and Emily's shaky breathing. She didn't know what to say. Her wrist was red where Derek had grabbed her, and tears were streaming down her face before she even realized she was crying. Jack turned to her, his face softening. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked gently. She nodded, though her lips trembled. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to do that." He shook his head. No one should have to take that kind of disrespect. Not ever. The four bikers sat down quietly, ordered black coffee, and treated Emily like a human being, like she mattered. As she served them, something in her heart began to thaw. Jack noticed her swollen eyes, the exhaustion behind her forced smile. He asked softly, "Rough life?" Emily hesitated, but somehow his tone, no pity, just quiet respect, made her open up. She told him about her mother's illness, about the bills piling up like snow in winter, about the nights she cried in the back room when customers mocked her or grabbed at her, about feeling invisible and worthless and alone. She didn't even realize she was crying again until Jack handed her a napkin. He listened without interruption, without pity, just respect. When they finished their coffee, Jack stood and placed a folded envelope on the counter. "That's for you," he said, "for the medicine, for your mom." Emily blinked in confusion. "I can't take this." But they were already walking toward the door. When she opened the envelope, her hands began to shake. Inside was a note that read, "From the last riders. You're stronger than you know. Keep fighting." And beneath it, $800 bills. Not enough to solve everything. Not enough to cure her mother or pay off all the debts. But enough to pay this month's bills. Enough to buy her mother's medicine. Enough to breathe for one more month. She ran to the door, calling after them. But they were already gone. Their motorcycles roaring into the night like thunder, fading into hope. Emily stood there in the rain, tears mixing with the drops, clutching the note to her chest. For the first time in years, she felt seen. She felt safe. She felt like maybe the world still had good people left. That night, Emily stayed late to clean the diner. As she wiped the counter, she smiled at her reflection in the window. The girl staring back wasn't the same one who'd stood there trembling hours ago. She'd been reminded of something powerful, that even in a cruel world, kindness can still roar louder than hate. 2 months passed. Emily still worked at Rosie's diner, still struggled with bills, still cried some nights when the weight got too heavy. But something had changed inside her. One Thursday evening, Derek Holt walked into the diner again. Sober this time. Quieter. He tried to sit at the counter like nothing had happened. Emily looked him in the eye, really looked at him, and said clearly, "We don't serve you here anymore." Derek's face reddened. "You can't." "Yes, I can. Leave." For a moment, Derek seemed like he might argue, might threaten, might do what men like him always did. But then he saw something in Emily's eyes, something that hadn't been there before. Strength. Derek left without another word. The old couple in the corner applauded softly. The truck driver nodded with respect. The mother with the sleeping child smiled. And Emily Carter stood behind that counter, no longer invisible, no longer silent, no longer afraid. Because bullies only win when good people stay silent. And Emily Carter was done staying silent. She still had Jack's note taped to her locker in the back room. Still read it on hard days. "You're stronger than you know. Keep fighting." The $800 hadn't changed her life. Her mother was still sick. Bills still came. Life was still hard. But knowing someone cared, knowing she wasn't invisible, knowing people like Jack Morrison and the Last Riders still existed in this world, that changed everything. And the next time someone needed help, the next time she saw someone being treated the way she'd been treated, Emily promised herself she wouldn't look away. She'd be the one to stand up. Because that's what you do when you've been shown kindness. You pass it on. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to The Last Riders for more stories where courage and compassion win. Tell us in the comments, have you ever stood up for someone who couldn't stand up for themselves? Your story might inspire someone else to do the same.